now. Mr. Yashwant Sinha, former Finance Minister, joins us live with his view on the budget. Mr. Sinha, firstly, what's your sense on on the broad direction of the budget? Do you believe this is a pro-growth budget?
Yes, I believe that it is a pro-growth budget. I also believe that it is a very complete budget, as a budget of the Government of India should indeed be, because it touches every aspect of the economy, it touches every segment of the population, and it appears to me that growth of infrastructure is the centerpiece of this budget. So that is very promising.
Mr. Sinha, if I may ask you, you asked in your at home to prepare a union budget. Mr. Jayant Sinha has been a part of it as well. He just justified a few minutes back to us the reason that the government has delayed meeting the fiscal deficit target of 3%. According to you and where you see things from, you have the pleasure of being objective about this. Do you believe it's a pragmatic exercise, or does that at one level hurt our credibility, which we had just about restored?
You know, there were statements from the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister which indicated that they will stick to the fiscal target of this year and also the fiscal glide path, namely reaching 3% in the next 2 years. But then Mr. Jaitley has mentioned the reasons why he has extended it to 3 years, and I think for the people at large, you know, 3.9% versus 3.6% does not make much of a difference. The only thing is that we'll have to convince the rating agencies, and we'll have to ensure that the extra expenditure does not lead to extra inflation. That will take enough supply side measures to ensure that enhanced fiscal deficit does not result in elevated levels of inflation.
But does this not hurt our credibility? In fact, one of your successors, Mr. Palaniappan Chidambaram, in an interview to ET Now just 2 days ago, said that the most important test that this government needs to pass is the fiscal test. And if they don't stick to the 3.6 and 3% glide path, they would have failed that test. If at all the government had to relax the fiscal target, should it not have done this in the last, in the last budget? You know, soon after the government came to power, that was a great opportunity to start off on a clean slate. Having accepted the targets, for the government to now ease itself, do you think that was a wise move?
I think it was the best thing to do under the circumstances. You know, you must recall to mind that I am the father of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Now, we were very keen that the 3% target should have been achieved way back in 2007-2008, but we failed to do that, and the UPA government took liberties with the fisc, and now today it is not open to Mr. Chidambaram, therefore, to criticize Mr. Jaitley for taking a little liberty with the fiscal deficit targets. I think the circumstances called for it, and as long as the entire fiscal space which has been created really goes for productive expenditure in the infrastructure sector, I will not have any complaints to make. I think it will be money worth spent.
Mr. Sinha, that's a very valid point. You are the father of the FRBM Act in India, but you've also raised a concern that money should be well spent, otherwise there is inflationary fear that creeps in. What does this fiscal exercise, the fact that there will be some amount of fiscal slippage next year and the fact that 3% is going to be delayed by another year, do for the RBI rate cycle? Do you believe the RBI is going to be far more cautious in cutting rates, because Governor Rajan has all along said he's going to watch the fiscal exercise unfold in New Delhi?
Well, you know, let's look at inflation. I think RBI's monetary policy is more centered on inflation than on fiscal deficit. And let's look at the quality of fiscal deficit. The quality of fiscal deficit, as I said, depends on how we are going to spend this money, and the finance minister has made it clear that the additional fiscal space which is available will be for infrastructure, so it will be money well spent. Now therefore it should not add to inflationary pressures, and if it does not add to inflationary pressures and wholesale price index being where it is, there is a little concern on the consumer price index, but that is also on a declining trend. I think there is enough room now for the RBI to seriously look at its monetary policy and go for a more significant reduction than they have done in the past.
You know, Mr. Sinha, the finance minister in his speech did take credit for winning the war against inflation. But realistically, how much credit can the government really take for inflation coming down? Don't you believe it's largely on account of steps taken by the RBI and, of course, the crude meltdown? Has the government done anything at all to bring down inflation? And do you see enough supply side steps in the budget that will help us structurally bring down inflation?
Yes, I do see a number of supply side steps in the budget. If you look at the totality of the tax incentives, if you look at the totality of the spending on infrastructure, if you look at the announcement that we will make India one common market as far as agricultural produce is concerned, if you look at the role of the state governments and on cooperative.
Mr. Sinha, I have a question on foreign investors because. Right. Mr. Sinha, I have a question on foreign investors. There seems to be this growing sense, at least in the critics of this budget, that the budget is very, very benevolent as far as foreign investors are concerned. You've done away with MAT for FIIs. You've also deferred GAR by another 2 years. One doesn't know when is it going to come back into effect. The question then is, are we really going out of our way to woo the foreign investors? And should we be doing that?
We are going out of our way to woo investment, both foreign as well as domestic, and the steps that you have mentioned which have been announced in the budget are equally applicable, except for MAT, to the domestic investors also. Additionally, if you look at the various steps which the finance minister has taken to promote domestic savings, all this together will lead to a virtuous cycle of higher domestic savings, infusion of foreign savings in the economy, the investment rate going up, and growth taking place, which is the kind of benign virtuous circle that every finance minister looks for, and this budget is going to contribute to that.
Right. Mr. Sinha, just that, you know, with the government has done away with the distinction of FDI and FII, one gets the feeling that it's chasing FII money more when it should be chasing FDI money more. That's more long-term capital, isn't it? There's enough to attract hot money or FII investment. Do you see enough direction to attract foreign direct investment as well?
There are a number of steps which have been taken which will attract foreign direct investment. But there are many countries in the world which make no distinction between FDI and FII, and if you look at the record of foreign institutional investors in India over a long period of time, you will find that the manner in which they have remained invested in this country shows that they are here to stay, and therefore the kind of volatility that you have seen in other countries has not taken place in India, because the institutional investors are also interested in the long-term story of India, and therefore they are not impacted upon by short-term concerns, and that's a great advantage that India has. FIIs are almost as good as FDI.
Mr. Sinha, I'm going to urge you to wear off your partisan hat and be the economist also that you have been, and the grassroots level politician that you have been. Do you believe this budget tests positive and gets high marks as far as the equity and the diminishing equality test in India is concerned?
Yes, if you look at the vision statement in the beginning of the budget speech, where he talks of what we are all going to achieve by 2022, that's a very stirring kind of a statement relating really to the ground situation in the distant villages of India. And I only wish that in course of time, in the course of this year, in the course of the next few months, the Finance Minister will break it down to targets, annual targets, and will set targets for the current year, so that we'll say how many houses do we want in the current year, we'll build in the current year, how many roads we'll build in the current year, how many highways we'll build in the current year, and that will carry much greater conviction than long-term goals, which are often looked at with less credibility.
But, Mr. Sinha, we've addressed the hits of the budget. Just a few last questions on the misses. What, according to you, was the big miss in the budget? One thing that comes to our mind is not enough has been done to incentivize manufacturing. Make in India, a clarion call made by the Prime Minister, but very little policy detailing in terms of incentives for corporate India or an enabling environment for manufacturing. Would that go down as a miss? If not, what are the other misses, according to you?
No, I would not treat this as a miss. Quite frankly, the budget gives an indication. It is an expression of intent. And as we go along, then many of these things will have to be taken care of. For instance, ease of doing business. Now, the budget has not gone into great detail, but the budget has one very important message, and that is that a single window clearance through the regulatory framework will become available to Indian and foreign investors. Now, that is something which will have to be worked out and in the next few months and become available to the investors. Now, ease of doing business, I should think, is one of the most important aspects of Make in India, apart from the reviving the investment cycle. So this budget will, on the one hand, revive the investment cycle. On the other hand, it will progress towards ease in doing business, and both together will make in India a success.
Mr. Sinha, I cannot let you go today without asking you a personal question. I just interviewed Jayant a while back, and he's not the first in your household to be a part of the budget-making exercise. He was anxious to know what your views on the budget are. Has the call been made to the Sun? And what has been told, if you can share with us on national television?
No, I have not. Let me make one confession to you. And that is that in the run-up to the budget, I made no suggestions to Jayant Sinha. I let him handle the whole thing. And in the run-up to the budget, he's been busy. I have been busy. So we have not really exchanged notes.
But what about after the budget? Did you have time to slip in a message? And if not, then ET Now is a great platform for you to deliver the message. What would be your message to Jayant Sinha as he was closely associated with this budget-making exercise?
No, I think both of them, and the whole team, they have done an outstanding job, and I'm very happy for Jayant Sinha, as I'm happy for Mr. Arun Jaitley and his team.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.